Hello, and welcome to another episode of Tactical Startup. This week's episode, we're going to be talking with Melanie Leonard. Melanie is an attorney, an entrepreneur, and one of the leading authorities on the use of legal practice management software. An early adopter of CLEO in her own practice, Melanie developed a passion for helping law firms achieve amazing results with their own use of practice management software, and soon became one of the first CLEO certified consultants. In 2018, Melanie sold her law practice to pursue her passion full-time, and Streamlined.Legal was born to help firms implement CLEO and Lawmatics. In just 3 years, Streamlined Legal has become one of the most sought-after consulting firms in the legal tech industry, having received CLEO's Partner-Led Excellence Award in 2019, 2020, and 2021. You're listening to Tactical Startup, a podcast dedicated to building amazing businesses. I'm your host, Taylor Darcy. In this podcast, we explore ways to innovate, improve, and level up your business through sales, marketing, automation, and business planning. Successful businesses pivot when times are bad and stay the course when times are good. We will have guests from different walks of life to help you see that success is not only possible, but even probable, no matter when or where you start. Through hard work and strategic planning, you can have the entrepreneurial life you've always dreamed. Tune in weekly to level up your business. Melanie, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Taylor.
You're welcome. Glad to have you. So, I used to use CLEO, so full disclosure. There were a lot of good things about CLEO, and there were some not my favorite things about CLEO,
Sure.
which is why I moved on from them. And that isn't to say that it's bad. It's just each person has their unique way of doing things, and so I think it's important that you recognize that, like, any type of software should do what you want it to do, and if it doesn't, then you need to find software that does, or suck it up, whichever version of those two things that happen. So, what was it about CLEO that got you excited? Because obviously you love it, and that's great. But what was it about CLEO that made that, like, that you not abandoned, I know that's not the right word, you left law to pursue it? Like, that's not a small thing. So what caused that?
It's not a small thing, you're right. And I'll tell you, the honest truth is, like, I started using CLEO way back, like 2008. And like when they first came out of beta. And so I had used it for a very long time. And I used it for my own law firm. And what I really loved, I like CLEO a lot, don't get me wrong. I'm a huge cheerleader for CLEO, but I will say what I really love about CLEO is that just the ability for it to help me organize my practice, right? Like, at the time I was a solo, I was trying to hire people and figure out how to, be able to delegate work and all that kind of stuff. And CLEO was a tool that I had that I was really able to leverage in order to do all that. So what I really loved was the freedom it gave me and the ability it gave me to help delegate and track things within my practice when I was really just one or two people. And so I was able to use that to scale and continue to grow, and it was wonderful. But I'll tell you, it was really like the building of the processes and systems that excited me so much, in addition to being able to use the software to execute on that. So it was a combination of both the software, but then the processes I was able to build using the software that just, really helped my firm to take off. And that's what I loved. I loved the feeling of being able to provide a really great service to my clients while not feeling super overwhelmed myself, right? Because I know that's that's a trap that a lot of small business owners can fall into, right? If you're doing all of the work and trying to run the business at the same time. So yeah, it was a combination of, yes, CLEO is a great product, but it was really the combination of being able to design my practice to fulfill what I wanted to fulfill while providing a really great service. And it was a really great tool to be able to do that.
All right. And I think, to give context, I think that's important. The legal industry itself is change adverse, to say the absolute least. Like, that is, they just barely started allowing e-filing in a lot of jurisdictions. So the idea that you used to have to, like, you would have to have your office close to the courthouse because you would have to file your documents in person. There wasn't this, or fax. Those were, I mean, that was it. It's only been within the last 5 to 10 years that we've transitioned to any type of electronic anything. Like now it's almost mandatory in a lot of states. But more to the point is practice management softwares used to be something that only big firms had, and it was a customized in-house version that they would hire a software developer to build for them, not something that the average person, like most people in your position and in mine, would be using a spreadsheet. That would be the highest tech that you could imagine for most solo attorneys. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but I wanted to give context to the listeners that the legal industry is usually on the back end of technical progress, not on the front end. Like they barely got away from using Courier, in some jurisdictions, which is nuts, but I digress. The typewriter, that's a new thing these days. Anyway.
It's true. And I think that, which is why it's been so fascinating to me over the last 10 years to see, CLEO grow and other competitors grow. And not only that, but just the industry as a whole, the whole legal tech industry, the amount of money these days that is being pumped into this industry to me is amazing.
Huge.
And I think it's awesome. I think it only benefits not just the law firms, but the clients that they're helping,
Right.
Because now they can better organize themselves and provide a better service and not get burnt out so quickly. I mean, really, the whole reason why I started Streamline Legal was not because I love CLEO. It was because I loved the idea of not having to buy into that stereotype of I'm a solo attorney and so I have to suffer and not make very much money.
Right.
It wasn't the money even part, it was that suffering part, where it's like I'm so overwhelmed all the time. I don't think it has to be that way. And so to be able to provide attorneys with an alternative and say, hey, a lot of times you already have this software sitting there, right? Like you bought it, you started using it maybe for billing or something and just kind of left the rest of it behind. And if you actually dive in and use those other parts, which we can help you to do, then I think that that's going to make for such a much better quality of life, not just for you, but the rest of your team too. Just like any business. I mean, obviously we're talking about law firms because that's where we have the expertise, but any kind of small business, the more you're able to put into place processes and procedures and systems that will help you, that's going to take a whole load off of you and your team, in my experience.
Yeah, and I think I kind of felt like that's where we were going to go with this is what systems and processes that you put in place, and not just for the sake of doing it, but for the actual usage of those things, because there's so much that you can automate. And I'll just use one very, very easy example that blows my mind that not everybody and their dog doesn't have automated. You have a website. You have a contact form on your website, hopefully. Hopefully you have a website. I shouldn't say. Hopefully you have a website. Hopefully you have a contact form on your website. But this is the automation that you should have on everything, is an autoresponder saying that you got their message. I submitted several months ago, requests to 2 different websites, 2 complete different things. And I have yet to hear back from them, even from an autoresponder, much less the person that I was trying to contact regarding the service or product. So I don't even know if they got it or if they didn't get it. But the issue something as dumb and as simple as that. There are so many automations and integrations you can do these days that to forego one of the most basic ones just absolutely just blows my mind, because it's such a simple thing to do. This isn't like you don't need to hire a software developer to do it. You could hire a VA from Upwork if you need to. So what type of automations do you see? Because, law is a niche, but at the same time, we're still business owners. And so there's a lot more that is similar than dissimilar. Yes, we have unique, rules of professional conduct and things that, solicitation issues that we face. But running a business is not completely different, right? So what are some automations and systems that you have seen that really take businesses from the solo, I'm freaking out, I have more work than I can do, but not enough work all at the same time. Tell me about that. What have you got?
Yeah, so even going back to when I had my law firm days, I'm a huge fan of communication. I mean, whether we're talking about with clients or whether we're talking about, just internally, like I communicate. That's what I do. So that's always been huge for me. And so what I love seeing is anytime that we can help our clients, I mean, whether it's a law firm or any other kind of small business, communicate with your clients, right? So I'm thinking of things like letting them know the progress of things, how things are going, what's happening. Those kind of status updates, I think, can be really, really helpful, not only to just let the client know, of course, what's happening, but when you do that, they're less likely to reach out to you, right? Like they're not
Right.
panicking at the last minute to catch you via email or phone because you've already provided them with the update and they know exactly what to expect, right? So I feel like the more of that type of communication that we can accomplish, the better it's going to be, because now we don't have as many people reaching out to us and trying to figure out what's going on. We provided them that information. So what I
Right.
see a lot of success with is when you can break your services, whether it's legal or not, break your services down into stages, right? Just let them know what
Right.
to expect. And if you provide that to them, first of all, at the very beginning can be very helpful. So they have, setting great expectations. But even as you go along and provide the service, give them those kind of updates, right? Because
Right.
even if you told them at the very beginning, they're going to forget or they have other stuff going on and they're not always going to remember. So the more you can remind them as you're going along where you're at, I think that's helpful. And so one of my favorite automations is we encourage firms to use any type of workflow feature or task list feature that they might have in their software. And a lot of them, whether you're using CLEO or my case won't do it, CLEO, or there's a number of others that will integrate with, with Zapier is the software.
Right.
And when you integrate your workflow and it triggers a notice to have Zapier send an email to your client, that's awesome, because now when I get to the third step in my workflow, I check it off, I completed it, Zapier will automatically send an email to your client saying, congrats, we're at this stage and this is
Right.
what we told you was going to happen and this is what you can expect. Well, if I put in like 5 of those in my workflow, now my client's being updated, every 5 or 6 days or every week or whatever it's going to be.
Right.
Talk about some awesome communication. Now that's how you build those raving fans that people talk about in marketing,
Exactly.
right? Like
Exactly.
that's how you build the clients that say, I always knew what was going on. I felt so secure. She did a great job. That's the kind of thing. So anything that has to do with communication, but specifically to help people follow along with what you're doing. Because again, we do this all day long, right? Like we're the
Right.
attorneys sitting there doing the same motion every day, doing the same hearing every day. But our clients don't know, like they've never been through this, hopefully. So the more that we can, depending on your practice,
Right.
the more that we can provide them with this information, the more secure they're going to feel, and the less, they're going to be trying to figure out what's going on and constantly calling and emailing
Right.
and texting. So I truly believe any type of automation like that, where you're updating them, is very, very valuable.
And I couldn't agree more. And to kind of add to your point, I have a video on YouTube that's 7 signs you hired a bad attorney and what you can do about it. And the absolute number one complaint I get on there, like not about me, is that the attorneys don't communicate. Like the client will reach out to them and they will leave them hanging for weeks and in some instances months. Now, I'm a big believer in, if I don't have anything to communicate, don't communicate. Like, don't waste our time just to say, nothing, right? Oop, nothing's happened. Like, that's but at the same time, they don't know that, right? Like, they are, it's like, look at the wall of communication, right? Like, you don't just send emails for the sake of nothing most of the time. But to provide a reasonable status update, right? And I think what you're talking about here is saying, okay, so here's where we're at now, here's where we're going to be, and here's approximately the amount of time that's going to take. So that then they have something tangible they can look at, rather than be like, I mean, this litigation especially is very stressful for people, rightfully so, right? Like their lives and livelihoods, whether you're on plaintiff or defense, whatever, it doesn't matter. there's stress that goes with it that we've already somewhat assimilated for that, because we've been to law school, and we deal with this on a regular basis. So while it's still stressful, not going to say that it's not, we've already accepted that risk, right? Versus this may be the only case, as you said, that they've ever done, and so they don't know what to expect. And if you're not providing the very basic of what to expect, there's books on babies, for crying out loud. And what to expect when you're expecting, right? Why aren't we giving what to expect when you're litigating, right? Like, that's
Absolutely.
legit.
Absolutely.
That is legit.
These kind of updates I'm talking about can be very general as far as you can use them for multiple clients, right? I'm not suggesting that you sit down and write an email every time you want to update a client.
Right.
No, I'm saying come up with your 5 stock emails or your 5 stock videos or whatever you want to use to explain the process, and send that out. Because here's the thing, even if they have more questions or detailed questions, they're going to ask you. That's fine, right?
Right.
But now at least they have this expectation of, hey, this is discovery. We won't hear anything for at least 12 weeks while we wait for them to respond, or whatever it's going to be, right?
Right.
Well, you better believe that, for 12 weeks, maybe they're cool to sit tight. Like, if they're okay with that, that's cool. But you better believe in like 14, 16, 18 weeks, if they haven't heard from you, that email is probably going to prompt them to reach out to you, right?
Exactly.
Whereas opposed to, if they haven't heard anything from you, or they don't recall the last thing you told them because it was way at the beginning, and now that you're here, they don't remember, right? You better believe they're going to be calling way more often, like maybe once a week, once every couple of days, to figure out what's going on, because they just don't know. So the more that we can, provide that information to them, I think they'll be better off for knowing it, but you'll also be better off for not having to, take those calls every 3 days, or your assistant takes them. Now you got another message, and now you got to deal with it. Like, no, just...
Don't they know I'm working on the case? Like, that's the assumption that communication has happened is amazing. Like, how many times attorneys think that. Don't they know? When that's not reality, right? That's just not reality.
I feel like it's a little bit like marketing. Like, you have to tell them multiple times, because like you said, they're new at this. They don't have the experience. Like, tell them multiple times. Sometimes you have to tell them multiple times before they remember or understand, or whatever the situation is. But I think the expectation that, hey, I wrote it in an engagement letter that you read, well, that you maybe didn't read 6 weeks ago when you hired me.
Right.
That's not a very good expectation. Like, yes, put it in your engagement letter, but to expect that everyone read and remembered it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the reasons why, like, I provide my engagement letter. Obviously, we have to by rules, but I also provide a welcome letter, which basically outlines frequently asked questions, if you will, right? Things that are going to be that are addressed up front. That way expectations are managed. There's nothing worse than signing up with somebody and you having and you don't know what to expect, right? Like, they don't know, like, just basic information, like, here's the name and email address of your attorney, right? Like, because a lot of times I use my contact email address until they've retained me, so that I don't get spam. I don't put my personal email, or my, not my personal, but you know what I mean? Like, I don't put my specific email to me anywhere out there, so that the spam bots don't catch it, get it. And even then, sometimes I get weirdos spamming me for stuff. But point is that, like, and so I send them the name, the address. I explain how long it could potentially take. I go through all of these, like, details that aren't explained anywhere else, right? Like, because your engagement letter doesn't say your case could take anywhere between a year and 5 years. Who knows, right? But I say that, and then I also point them to, like, because I use Smokeball. I love Smokeball, by the way. And it's I point them to the portal. I show them that's where we're going to communicate from now on, so that they have an expectation of moving to that portal, and then I make sure that I communicate within the portal all the time, so that they don't think, oh, well, I'll just communicate when it's this way, but I'll email them the rest of the time, right? Like, and so it's like a sort of like managing expectations, but then gently guiding people to the way that works best, because my communicate portal is a secure client portal that's I don't have to worry about email being an issue, and I don't have to worry about oopsing it to opposing counsel, or they don't, right? Like, because it's a locked system, I don't have to worry about it, and so it's more secure than even the technical HTTPS secure stuff, it's more secure than that because it takes an extra step to accidentally send something to someone that you shouldn't have sent it to. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but so far I haven't sent anything to anybody that I shouldn't have. Unlike some attorneys in Texas.
And I think that I mean, you're setting yourself up for success, right? You and your clients, right? By providing that information. So I think that's fantastic.
And I think that, you know, systems should, like, for instance, I implement systems so that that if I have to spend extra time on a matter, or if I have to spend extra time with the client, I'm not sitting there going, I just wasted time, right? Like, that's my purpose, is to spend more time speaking with that client. It has more value than doing these automated stuff that can be automated. And I think a lot of people think, oh, well, it's so impersonal, right? Like, they think automation is impersonal. No, automation fulfills a purpose. And as long as you stick to what a purpose of automation does, then it's golden. If you try to automate the person out of it, that's where you run into problems and people feel like that you don't care. But if you automate everything you can and keep your person in it, people will love you, right? Like, because they will see that, oh, I'm still kept abreast of the situation, but I get to talk to my attorney and it's relaxed because he's not annoyed by the 50th email that I've sent him, or the, you know, whatever type thing, situation that it is. So stages, workflows. What else? Share some of that awesome wisdom.
So I think some of my other favorites, and this is not necessarily a new one, but I will tell you that time and time again, people just aren't doing it, right? And that is simple, basic, like everyone could do it if they wanted to. Filters in your email, like these, people are not taking advantage of these, right? Like, and people say, oh, I have a filter in my email. I'm like, okay, well, what does it do? Oh yeah, it filters all my newsletters to, you know, to spam or to garbage or whatever. And I'm like, okay, that's good. You could just unsubscribe, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, but here's the kind of things I'm thinking of. Like, one of my favorites is I can make a filter in my email that says, when this client emails me, give the filter the email address. When this client emails me, send it to my practice management software, because that's where I want to track all my communications so my team can see it too, and it's not stuck in my inbox. My team never got to see it, whatever. So being able to do something like that, where it automatically filters straight into my practice management software before I even see it, frankly, so maybe other people will see it or act on it, I think is awesome. So I think things like that. Another one that I love to do is there are emails that I actually want to see. I just don't want to see them like the minute they come in, right? Like for example, newsletters, right? I want to stay on top of what's happening in legal tech, and I want to stay on top of who's offering what and all that. But I don't need to see it like right now. So what I like to do is I filter it out, and I'm like, every Thursday at 2:00, I check this folder where all of my email newsletters went, you know? And I skim through them, I read them, I go through, delete whatever I don't want, say what I want, whatever. But it's not taking my attention away. Because I think one thing that I find people underestimate with some regularity is how much time and attention a little thing like an email alert takes from you, right? Yeah. So even if it's just, people say, oh no, I saw it and I just ignored it. Okay, but how many times did you see it and ignore it before you got to the emails you actually needed to look at and address? Deal with, right? And then let's add all that up and let's go over, like, I know some of you have emails sitting there for like weeks, so like, don't even tell me it's been 20 hours, right? No, we're going for weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you know, and we add all that up, and until you have an inbox that is like very strict with all those filters, I don't think you can even appreciate or understand the extent to which it is so freeing and so time saving. So yeah, that's like a little thing that pretty much everybody, I'm assuming most of our listeners have access to, that maybe just haven't taken the time to dive into it or set it up or whatever needs to be done. And don't think you have to do it yourself, right? Like, I mean, if you have other team members that are, you know, tech savvy or no filter email, like, and many of them do, frankly, you know, let them at it. Like, tell them what you want, let them do it, and I really have seen, for me, it's made a huge difference.
Right.
Um, in addition to, well, I was gonna say, in addition to letting someone else manage my email, but that's a whole different story because that's not automation, that's an actual person. We'll talk about
Right.
that later.
Right. Right. Understandable. And I think that that's one of the important things that I was taking from this is, we get into, like, I don't like using the word argument because in attorney world argument means something different than in non-attorney world, but you know just because someone invites you to an argument doesn't mean you have to show up, right? Like that's one of the
Love
things that
that saying.
it is.
Yeah.
It's such a great saying. But just because someone puts themselves in your email inbox doesn't mean you have to show up, right? Like you don't have to respond. You can allow what you intake and what you don't intake, right? Unsubscribe is a great feature, right? If it's not relevant to you anymore, why do you keep getting that? Number one, you're tempting like just too much stuff, right? Like it's information overwhelm. Number two, do you want to end up with the inbox 5,000 or do you want to end up with inbox zero? Like I'm at inbox zero. I delete, I folder, I put everything according to need as it comes in, right? Now what I usually do is I go through a period of where I'll subscribe to stuff and then I'll get like, okay, this is annoying the crap out of me, then I unsubscribe, and I go through a pattern of that, right? And then I'll be like, oh yeah, I really did miss that. And then I'll go back and subscribe to it again. But at the same time, and that works for me, but find what works for you. That's the point, is that if the filtering system works for you and can help you stay focused and help you stay on track, then that's a win, right? Like that's really what we're talking about doing by systems and processes is improving your performance, right? And improving your lifestyle. One of the things that really helps me is like I'm on my phone at night, but at the same time, I don't like getting work emails at night. It's when I'm at work, I'm prepared for a work email, right? When I'm at home, I'm sitting there, my baby will be with me, or I'll be taking care of one of the kids, and getting an email alert right in the middle of doing something with my family just totally messes with my head. And even if it's a positive email, like it's just because it's work. And so what I found is I use Outlook for my email. There's a way to just mute notifications for my office email after 6 p.m. So I know when I go home. Now, if I want to check it, then that's different. But I can eliminate that annoyance of why am I checking my phone for a work thing when I'm not going to do something regarding it? But I can do that and silence that, and I can still check it when I need it. And it's greatly impacted my peace of mind at home, right? Like, I mean, you could do things like turn off your phone, sure. Yeah, right. Like anybody does that anymore. I'm not saying nobody does it, but realistically, everybody has their phone on most of the time. Let's call it what it is. But, there are ways to create a better lifestyle. And I think one of the things that entrepreneurs, there's this weird, perverse, like you have to sacrifice your firstborn to be a successful entrepreneur attitude, right? Like, oh, I was up working 80 hours, and there's this weird, like, that you have to like work all day and work all night, and that's the only way you're ever going to be successful. What if you die of a heart attack in the process because because you chose to put work over it? Is your family going to be, yeah, cool, he built a business, and you died?
And let's be honestly like super clear about this. It is it's no mystery that attorneys have one of the highest, drug use, alcoholism, suicide rates of all professions.
Yeah.
Maybe next to mailman. But like
dentists are number one.
It's like seriously, like
Yeah.
if there's anything you can do to create less stress in your life, I'm not saying that's going to prevent all alcoholism or all drug use, but definitely, stress is a factor that leads to more and more of that and the progression of those kinds of diseases and things. And so I think that anything we can do to create a less stressful, a healthier lifestyle is only going to benefit, again, not only us, but the clients we're trying to help.
Right.
Like how awesome of a service can you provide when you haven't eaten in 10 hours and you haven't slept in 3 days? And like, I don't want to hire that attorney. Like, I don't want to hire that dentist. I don't want to hire that doctor. Like, I want someone who's on the top of their game, like, what do they call it? Firing on all cylinders. Like,
Right.
I want to make sure that this is someone, I mean, airplane pilot? Like, would you hire an airplane pilot that was running their own business? Like, yeah, I think anything we can do to increase the quality of life of not only attorneys, but just any small business owner, I think is fantastic. And that's honestly, that's the whole reason I started Streamline Legal.
Right,
Like,
right.
I love technology, absolutely, but I recognize the impact it can have on small business owners, in this case, attorneys, and that's what I want. That's the impact that I want to have, not just for me, but for those small business owners.
Right, and that's kind of, I mean, that's a huge impact too, right? Because I think there's a lot of ignorance. Like, you can be a perfectly educated person and be very ignorant all at the same time, right? And because they're afraid of technology. Like, I'm a very aficionado. I love tech, maybe too much. My wife would probably say, but the idea that entrepreneurs wear this burned out syndrome as a badge of honor is what drives me absolutely bonkers. When is that okay, right? Like, it's not really okay. It's that we've deluded ourselves into thinking it's okay, because we think, or a lot of them, not necessarily all of them, that it means that we're being productive when we're just spending time, right? Like, we're burning ourselves at both ends for the benefit of others, but at the same time, if we use up that candle, then we have no more light, right? Like, a slower burn gives a longer light, and we can do more, and we can add more wax to it. But if you burn up that candle without adding more wax, more energy, more anything, then guess what? It's gone. And like, you hear these really big entrepreneurs talking about, how crazy, much time they spend working, and it blows my mind. I'm like, but that's not why I became an entrepreneur. Yes, I have to work longer days some days, but the idea being that I don't have to work longer days every day, right? Like, there are some days when deadlines just happen and you have to get stuff done. But for the most part, getting stuff done shouldn't be a surprise to you, and you should be automating what you can so that you're not spending that time stressed about fixing the problem instead of, like, could have already had it fixed, right? Like, lowering that load just a bit.
And honestly, I think there are plenty of attorneys and other small business owners that are afraid of technology or not comfortable with it or whatever. But I also think there's a large percentage of attorneys that their brains just don't think systematically, right?
No,
like, they
right.
it doesn't come naturally to them. I mean, it just doesn't come naturally to everybody, right?
Right.
And I think that to be able to help them learn that type of a thinking is really a great skill.
Right.
And I think that the more that they can embrace that and be able to, and whether they do it internally or, outsource it or whatever they do, but the more that they can add a systematic approach to even just some of the things they're doing. I mean, it's not like you have to systematize your whole practice to even feel the benefit of it, right?
No,
like,
right.
The more you can systematize, the more benefit there's going to be in it. So I think it's a combination of both. Yes, there's some fear out there of technology, absolutely. But I think also it's just not something that comes naturally to everybody, and definitely not a lot of attorneys, frankly.
Yeah. Well, they don't exactly teach that in law school, right? Like, that's not...
That is absolutely true.
They don't teach how systems can improve your life, right? Like, it's
Correct.
very much... I mean, come on, we're still doing the case method and, the Socratic method and all of these very, like... I'm not saying not useful, but very not modern approaches to things. Like, for instance, in law school, if you try to get a template and use it, you're cheating, right? But in the real world, we have templates that we use for things, because why reinvent the wheel when time is essentially money, right? Like, I mean, I'm not saying to cheat. I'm saying you take a template, you use it accordingly. But that's a foreign concept for most, like, coming out of law school. That's not something that they teach you, say, to start with something good and then make it better and make it according to the needs of your client and the needs of your case or needs of whatever it is that you're doing. But they don't talk about that. They basically, you're reinventing the wheel. Every law student reinvents the wheel every time for everything that they do. And so it's a mindset shift. There we go. Words, my brain. Anyway, when you have to like take a look at things and say, okay, what is my life? What do I want it to be? Where am I at? And how can I get there? And what systems and processes can I put in place to make these things happen so that I can take the human oopses out of it, right? Like, because that's part of what we're talking about here. I get busy with things and I forget. I forget that I needed to send something. And so I write it down. Yes, I do, but I still have to do it, right? But things like, for instance, one of the things we talked about was Lawmatics. I love Lawmatics. Lawmatics is my favorite CRM in the world that I've ever seen because it's so customizable. It's so amazing. But what was interesting is that, like, for instance, I have my different stages set up so that, like, for instance, I'll get a client intake form. And rather than having to sit down and send out an email saying, here, now book your phone call with me, I have it set up so that each stage that I put it in, it will automatically send the next thing so that I don't have to do that, right? And once I know that it's someone that I want to meet with, then I can be at the grocery store if I need to be, and it looks like I'm at my office because I've read the client intake form. Oh, okay, cool. This is someone I want to work with. Send hit that button and boom, it's out, right? Like, and it creates a feeling of like that response factor that clients need these days that they didn't used to need, right? Like snail mail used to be acceptable. Email used to be acceptable. Now we're into text messages where people want things now, even if it's not realistic. Unfortunately, that's true. It's not realistic, but they want it now. And so the idea is if you can get as close to that as possible within reason and not driving yourself batty crazy, then that's a win for everybody, right? The client or the potential client feels needed and feels like they're important and feels like they can get what they want. And you're not driven crazy by it. But it used to be when I started my practice many years ago, I'd get a client intake form in and I'd sit down and I'd compose a super nice letter and just be all cute and not cute, but you know what I mean? Like just be very, very, involved with it. And it was it didn't matter how nice the letter was. Either they were interested or they weren't. And the automation made it so that now I don't have to be, right? Like I can gauge their interest by how they're responding to me because I'm responding fast. They're the ones that dictate terms, right? They're the ones that dictate speed. So anyway, my point is that these are all things that you have to learn. And eventually as I hire people and I can build my systems even further, then we can even improve even more. Like, for instance, one of the things that I've gotten feedback on was my client intake form was too difficult or too personal. Like, they didn't feel like they could trust me yet. And so I took some things out of I put it in there for the purpose. I asked for their anniversary. Okay, and I was doing it so I could follow up with their anniversary and say, happy anniversary. That was what I was doing it for. But people felt like that was too personal. And so I took it out because I don't want to lose a client over something, and I didn't even think of it until someone voiced their concern that was an issue, and so I removed it. And now I didn't gain that client because they thought it was weird that I had it in there in the first place. So I already had a negative connotation to them, but I'm hoping that I won't eliminate the next person that would have felt, oh, that's too intrusive, when my intent was surely just to be friendly and part of their life, right? And recognize that they might be married or in a relationship or whatever it is. So tell me, so we're getting close to the end, but I wanted to, what nugget of wisdom, like if you could boil it down into one thing, what would you tell my listeners as far as running and operating a business is concerned?
Yeah, I think that especially at your more beginning stages of growth, right? This is now my second business that I've started, and I will tell you, I learned so much that first time around that now I'm able to, just feel like I know a little bit going into the second one. I don't know everything, of course, but I know a little bit more than I did the first time around. But I think the idea is assuming, of course, that your goal is to grow, because let's be honest, some entrepreneurs find a stage that they like and are happy with, and they just stay, and that's great.
Right.
But assuming that you want to continue to grow from whatever stage you're at, I really, really think it's important to master the skill of delegating, because I see it's so easy, and I've learned from experience again that like if I don't let go of some stuff, it's just not possible. Like there are only so many hours in the day. There's only so much of me to go around. Like if you don't master that skill, or at least get a grasp on it, you're just going to struggle the whole time. Like it doesn't even matter how far you get, you'll continue to struggle and struggle and struggle. And so I think that that's a really, really important skill that people sometimes, I mean, I get it. It's hard. It's a challenge. Like it didn't come easy to me either, and still doesn't sometimes. But I'll tell you what I did to help with that, right? So I started trying to master that skill myself. I started delegating stuff, right? But then I hire people that will call me out when I'm not delegating, right? So if I define like, these are the things I should be doing, these are the things you should be doing, these are the things you should be doing. If I'm not doing one of those things and I try and jump into someone else's lane, they'll call me out on it.
Right.
And that's been super helpful to me as well, right? Because I appreciate the accountability. I appreciate having somebody else there to make sure that I'm doing what I said I wanted to do. So yeah, that delegation skill, I think, is something that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with. And just, if you aren't mastering it early on, it's just going to continue to be a struggle. So I'd say as soon as you're able and possible, like figure out that delegation, because that's super, super the key to scaling, in my opinion.
And I want to add just one thing to that. I think entrepreneurs' desire for perfection is the enemy of great, right?
Absolutely.
Because yes, only you can do certain things, and that's absolutely true. But you should not be doing everything, right? And so you're trying to seek this perfectionism that causes other things to not get done that should be getting done, right? Because there is only so many hours in the day. So don't let trying to be perfect, because you're not. Like legitimately, no matter how hard you try, no matter what you do, there is no such thing as perfect, right? I just flubbed the word perfect trying to say there's no such thing as perfect, right? Like,
right.
But it's true though. And so many entrepreneurs are trying to be perfect that they're forgetting that one, life is an iterative process, right? Like you don't get it right the first time, you get it right the 10th time or the 100th time or the millionth time, whatever time it is, right, that you have. So the point is get it okay your first time, and then get it better the second time, and get it da-da-da-da-da. But in between the beginning of those, using that delegation, like you're saying, to get it from okay to great, is going to win over the person that tries to take that extra time to get it to perfect, right? Because a great product is going to get out there and still get sold. A perfect product is never going to happen, or a perfect sale, or a perfect service, or a perfect this. Like I filed a complaint the other day, and I forgot to change it to a PDF, and so the beautiful font that I was using got stripped out of it, and it was just a yucky old sans serif Arial font, and that annoys the crap out of me, right? But it was because I didn't take that step and change it into a PDF that would have kept that font in it. But that's a process. Will I pay attention to that next time? Yes. I oopsed, right? But I got the complaint filed, and that's the point, right? Like that's.
I was going to say, and that's what your client wanted, right? Like
exactly.
May never even see the complaint, number one, but number two, if it gets them the result of what they want, like the case is resolved the way they want, or they get their settlement or whatever, like that's what they care about.
Right.
Who cares about the font?
Right. I care as a person, but the end result wise doesn't matter. So if I'm not beating myself up about it, other than I made a mistake. But as far as at the end, you're absolutely right. The end result is going to be that they are going to appreciate the what happens, not that I oopsed it on the font, and they may never even care, right? Even if they did know that I did that. And so it's that type of thing. Is the enemy of great is perfect, which is an interesting. We can have a whole discussion just on that by itself. Sure. So as always, I like to end my session with a few questions that for a chance for my listeners to get to know you. First, what is the funniest place you've ever fallen asleep?
I fell asleep in high school when I was on a trip with my whole class to go to New York City, and we saw the first Broadway show I had ever seen, and it was Miss Saigon, and I fell asleep during Miss Saigon. And I kick myself to this day because I love musicals and I'm a huge fan, but we were with our friends, we had stayed up late the night before, whatever, I fell asleep. It was so embarrassing.
I think I fell asleep. I've fallen asleep some weird places too, but I mean, like, it was in the middle of Phantom Menace, Star Wars. I'd been flying all day, and I was at the time I was seeing my fiance, and they wanted to go see the movie, and I was like, okay, fine, I'll go see the movie. I'm exhausted, but whatever. And so I slept through, I think, 90% of that thing. So yeah, I've done that. I fell asleep in the bathroom one time, not doing anything like that. That's a story for a different day. But yeah, I was on the floor, which is so nasty. I'll have to. I have lived. Let's just say that. So, what is the next thing? Is what is the dumbest way you've been injured?
Okay, so 2 years ago, well, no, let's see, about a year and a half ago, I fell down the stairs and broke my ankle.
Oh,
and
no.
It was a big thing. Like, I had to have the surgery and lots of pins and rods and all this kind of stuff. We had months and months of rehab. I mean, like, it was a big thing. But the thing of it was, when I was actually walking down the stairs, I only fell on the last step from the stairs to the floor. Like, it's not like I tumbled down the whole flight. It was the last step.
Yeah.
To this day, I have no idea how or why I fell or slipped or whatever, but it was whatever. It was like just in the right exact position where it like shattered my ankle, and it was a mess.
Oh.
So yeah,
That's
be careful on those stairs.
Yeah. Well, you know what I've done where I thought I was at the last step and it turned out I wasn't at the last step.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so what happened? Well, either I stepped down thinking there's another step, and so my body is off, or I miscalculated the steps, and so then I'll fall forward because I miscalculated that step, and I'll look like I'm a graceful ballerina. But my dumbest one was I was at the beach one time. Actually, it was at my wife's birthday party, and my niece was sitting on the ground, and I was playing in the sand, and I started taking exaggerated steps to try to just mess with her. Wasn't trying to do anything, and I lost my balance, and I just went tumbling over and nailed into the beach my shoulder. And I'm pretty sure I cracked something, but I never ended up going to the doctor, and so it was so stupid. But I think I saw it on an x-ray years later that I had an injury in my shoulder from it, because I don't fall enough to say, that's where I could point to that instance because I don't fall that often. But yeah, I felt so stupid for doing that because I was just trying to be funny, and I ended up maiming myself. All right,
because we're all human, like right? You said, we're all human. We all make mistakes.
Right. What's something that people think makes them look cool but actually makes them look ridiculous? This last one.
Gosh, I don't know. Okay, here's what I've got for this one. And I have a prime example. People are walking around with these Airpods like they're the coolest thing. Like, yes, they serve a purpose. I use them with some regularity when I'm trying to, talk on my phone or whatever. But people that walk around and just keep them in when they're not even using them, I can't get behind that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. It's weird because you can't tell if they're on the phone, they're not on the phone, if they're listening, if they're not listening, but they respond to you.
But
maybe they do.
What they want.
Maybe, or maybe they just want you to leave them
alone.
alone. That's a possibility that's there. For me, okay, so I'm a bit of a conundrum. I love technology, I love progression, I love movement, but there's certain things that I think are stupid. Like for instance, I love baseball. My wife loves it more, but I love baseball. But the new uniforms that they have pants puddles, where rather than if you look at the new uniforms, most of them, they have a huge amount of this much of material down at the bottom, and so it's a puddle. It's a puddle of pants at the base. The old school ones, the old school ones, they have the weird stirrup socks and stuff like that. I'm not suggesting we have to do the serious old school, but the pants puddle just looks so dumb to me. And the flat brim on the hat, like, it should be curved, it should be rounded. That's just how a baseball hat should be. They look stupid. I'm sorry, I cannot get behind that. And it's like, I'm sure, other people are like, awesome, those look so cool, but I'm like, I can't. I would never, ever wear one. But the pants puddle just gets on my nerves, like nobody's business. I'm like, could we have just had normal pants rather than pants puddles? Like, and you can tell, because I'm like, okay, these guys are fit people that, the pants should fit, right? These are not like when you're super tall and you're super big, clothes just don't work. Like, just legit, straight up. There's challenging for all of us. But these are normal, average size, and I'm guessing custom-made pants, right? You would think that the tailors or whoever are designing these suckers could make them so that they look like they fit rather than they look like they're wearing their daddy's pants instead. Because that's what it looks like to me, anyway. Melanie, this has actually been so much fun. I am so grateful that I had you on. I feel like we could probably talk for hours about lots of different things. But probably. Unfortunately, our time has come to an end. Tell my guests where they can find you. For those of you listening, if you're watching this, you've seen it on YouTube. You see where to find her. But where can they find you if they're listening?
Yeah, absolutely. You can reach us online at www.streamline.legal or on any social media, really, Facebook, Instagram, we're all over the place. Although we haven't ventured into TikTok yet, so I'll have to come back after we try that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I'm not that funny. I'm not that entertaining. I'll be honest with you. Like, I can develop...
I am either, but...
Yeah, like, I can develop content, but funny is not me. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying, like, I can teach, I can educate, I can do lots of things, and a lot of people do that on there. That's true, too. But I'm just not able to do it really short. Like, that's just not me.
Here's the thing. I've been studying some of those TikTok lawyers, like, watching their feeds and stuff, and they're not all funny either, though. So,
yeah,
I don't know. We'll come back and talk about that another day.
Someday. Well, thank you so much, Melanie. I really sincerely appreciate it. And you have a great day, and we'll talk to you later, okay?
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Well, that was Melanie Leonard from Streamlined Legal, and I am so grateful that she came on and talked about systems and processes. Remember, if you've gotten value out of this video, don't forget to subscribe and like the channel, and make sure that you're giving us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or wherever you have your podcast at. It really helps other people to find us and help to deliver this value that we've provided for you. Until next time, always make sure to think about your business tactically. Thank you so much. Bye.